So, welcome to the live stream of the new Shepard launch, which is going to be going off in just over 30 minutes. And so you know where they are in the process, they've just started loading the astronauts onto the capsule. So it looks like things are all going well for now, but we'll be checking in every once in a while to watch the process as it happens. Just so you know a little bit about myself, I'm Josiah, and I'm the chief engineer of a student group called ASTRA that's based here in Bremen. And we are trying to build a rocket that goes to the Karman Line. But we're also very interested in what's happening in rocketry and in space activities in general. And we can actually learn a lot from what's actually happening in the commercial world and maybe get a little bit inspired and get excited about what's happening. And this is certainly a vehicle that has been developing for quite a long time. And there's lots of inspiration that we can take from this vehicle, as well as some really exciting things that are happening that's going on underneath the hood. And we can talk a little bit about that as we get ready for the launch. And of course, we want to see the launch and witness it with our own eyes as more and more people are being hurled into space and seeing the world from above. And I think this is a really special thing, which the new Shepard vehicle is allowing us to achieve in the modern world. For me, it's always been a dream to go to space. So it would certainly be one of my, wishes that maybe one day I would be on one of these flights. I would maybe want to stay in space a bit longer than they will be going up for. It's just going to be a couple minutes that they'll be in space. But it's still really cool that they get to do this and that this is even possible in today's world. Because when I was growing up, the only way you could ever go to space is if you were a NASA astronaut. And being not American, the chances of that were really, really small. So it's really cool that there's other ways for you to pursue becoming an astronaut in today's world. So I'm excited to watch this launch, and I'm excited about the implications that this launch has and other launches like it have for the future of human activity in space. So right now, as I said, they're just loading the capsule. It's going to be about 30 minutes away from launch. I think it's best now to talk a little bit about what the vehicle is and what it's trying to achieve. Mainly what this vehicle is trying to do is it's trying to get essentially to the Karman Line, which is also what Astra's vehicle, Transcendence, is trying to do. Of course, we're not going to be taking any people, but the mission profiles are actually pretty similar. And we can go into a bit into the mission profile right now. So, of course, step one is the launch of the vehicle. It's going to take off with its engine. It has a single engine. And it's going to fire that engine for, I think it's about a minute and a half or so. And then once it's burned all of its propellant, it's going to shut down the engine, as described in step two. And I think they will call this MECO, a main engine cutoff. Then what's going to happen is that the nose cone or the capsule of the vehicle is going to separate from the main body of the rocket. And the reason for this is that the booster of the rocket is actually going to come back and it's going to land itself. And the capsule is going to continue on and it's going to land on its own parachutes. So actually, another cool thing about this rocket is it's entirely reusable, 100% reusable. So they can keep flying exactly the same rocket without changing any parts out. So in terms of space flight, it's actually one of the only fully reusable vehicles. It just doesn't quite go to orbit, but that's okay. Then next phase is, of course, the booster will come back and it will fire that engine back up again for the landing. This is always really exciting because, watching a booster come back and land itself is, for me, never gets old. I would also like to point out that this was actually the first vehicle to ever be landed from space. It actually happened a little bit before SpaceX landed their Falcon 9. So it's kind of the first one, you know. Then, of course, the capsule will be coming back. It comes back a little bit slower because it has a more drag compared to its mass, so it comes back a bit slower. But what will happen is it'll deploy a bunch of parachutes when it's just before it's about to land, and this will, of course, slow the capsule down enough so that humans can withstand the impact. And then finally, the last stage is the landing itself. You're going to see at the landing, there's going to be a little bit of a puff of smoke when it lands. And this isn't because of how hard the capsule is coming down to the ground. It's actually because there's little rockets inside of the capsule which fire just before it hits the ground in order to kind of dampen the impact of the landing. And this is actually a really cool technology that is kind of, I don't know, how shall I say, stolen from the Russians, because they also do the same thing with their Soyuz capsule. I don't know if it actually makes it still is a super comfortable landing. I think it's still a bit bumpy, but it definitely makes it, I guess, more comfortable. And here you can see kind of a picture of what that looks like. You can see these clouds of dust that kind of come out just before the capsule lands. And yeah, that's just those rockets that are firing at that last instance. So coming back to the main screen, the vehicle is going to basically be going through propellant loading pretty soon, and getting it ready for flight and stuff. But another interesting thing to talk about is actually what is powering the rocket, and that would be the BE3 engine. And this is a very unique engine. So it burns liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, which is already interesting for the scale of the vehicle that we're talking about here, because usually that's for, like, you know, deep space operations. But they actually use it just for their main stage on their little on this little rocket, and they don't need any boosters or anything. And the reason why that's interesting is because usually these rockets don't have a huge thrust to weight ratio, so to speak. But here, a little bit about the engine itself. It has about 490 kilonewtons of thrust. And it's, like I said, it's with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. And the last interesting thing about it is that it's a combustion tap-off cycle, which is a less common cycle that's used in rocketry. But what does that really mean? I have a bit of a diagram here that kind of explains what's going on. So excuse the complication here, but what happens essentially is that the fuel comes out of the orange line here, going into the combustion chamber through the fuel pump. The oxidizer goes through the blue line, through the oxidizer pump and into the combustion chamber. But what's driving those pumps, right? And the way that they drive those pumps is that they actually take fuel from the combustion chamber, like they have a little line that's connected into the combustion chamber, and it takes all of the exhaust gases, the really hot, energetic exhaust gases, and actually pumps them into a turbine, which is this black dot here. And that turbine is what spins those pumps. And then, of course, the gas that comes out of the turbine just gets exhausted to the environment. But it kind of creates this weird situation where it's like, well, if they need combustion in order to drive the pump, then how do they get combustion in the first place? Because the pumps need to be running in order to have combustion to start. So it's kind of like this chicken and the egg situation. But once the rocket gets going, then, of course, this whole cycle can kind of keep itself running. Usually they use like helium or some compressed gas in order to spin up the turbine. And I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing here. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but yeah, combustion tap-off cycle. The reason why this is a little bit not used in the industry as much is because having a line that takes those hot gases and pipes it into somewhere means you need to have a pipe which is able to withstand those temperatures. And the temperature of the combustion chamber gases, that's like, you know, 3,000, 4,000 degrees Kelvin. So there's not really many materials that can handle that for a long period of time. But I guess the Blue Origin people have figured this out and made it so that it works for the new Shepard vehicle. So the last thing I kind of want to talk about before we get into the stream itself is what does this launch mean for the rocketry and the astronaut and the space-related community in general? One thing that's cool about this is that the people that are going onto this flight are just, you know, regular people like you and me. It does cost about $250,000 in order to get a seat. However, many of the seats that are coming are getting sponsored by companies that want to promote their products and promote their business. So actually, there's a lot of people on this capsule that are just regular people that happen to win a lottery and get to fly to space. So I still find that to be really cool, that just regular people can just go to space and experience what it's like to be an astronaut, even for just a little bit of time. The other interesting thing to think about is the distribution of astronauts who are going to space and how that's changing in the modern world because of rockets like this. It's not just because of the new Shepard, though. It's also because of, the Dragon capsule coming online, the Starliner coming online, and many human-rated systems which are going to take people to space. And I just want to show you this graph here, which is describing how the number of astronauts per year has gone over time. So you can see here, this goes all the way back to like the 1960s at the left of the graph, going all the way to the modern day on the right-hand side. And you can kind of see the major activities in space in this graph. So you can kind of see the first peak happening in kind of the 1960s to the 1970s, and that's of course when the Apollo program was running. So obviously they had a bit more astronauts going to space. And then you see another peak coming up in the early 1980s, which is corresponding to when the space shuttle started to come online. And then we had like 50, 60 people going to space every single year. Really exciting. And we actually had the most people going to space. I think it was in 1985, which was just 1 year before the space shuttle disaster of Challenger. And then of course when Challenger happened, we had a little bit of a dip in people going to space, and then after they fixed the problems with Challenger, again we had lots of people going to space again for another 10 or 15 years as the space shuttle was going well. And then of course we see another dip after the Columbia disaster, because they again shut down the space shuttle for a little while. And then we see that come back online again, but not quite as high. And then finally in the modern era, the era that of course I've been living in as a young adult and early teenager, where there's not really many launches that are happening per year. And if it's actually comparable to the early like 1960s and 1970s in terms of how many people are actually going to space. And this is kind of sad that we don't have as much as many astronauts going to space in the last 10, 15 years as we had in the past. And of course that's just because of the retirement of the space shuttle, which was really able to get lots of people into space. But this all changed in, of course, the last 2 years. So the second to last bar here is the number of astronauts that went to space last year, which is the most that have gone to space in I think 25 years. Basically going back to the heyday of the space shuttle era. And this year is also looking really good. 2022, you can see that we're already much above the average for the last 15 years. And I'm sure that when we add the next launches that are coming up in the year, we might even come close to breaking the all-time record for how many astronauts have been to space in 1 year. So I'm really looking forward to that. I hope that everyone's excited about there being more astronauts, because the more astronauts there are, the more chances that regular everyday people will have access to space. Once we get those numbers into the thousands, I think that's when we're really going to see more regular person activity in space. And I think that's what most of these people that go into this industry are kind of looking for. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a future where that's possible. And this is of course starting with companies like Blue Origin who are developing these rockets like New Shepard that can achieve these types of things. So let's switch over to the main cast here.
Been down in West Texas training and preparing. Let's take a closer look at the crew of Fifth Human Flight who've named themselves Natural Selection.
These are the crew that are going.
At age 5, we watched Buzz and Neil walking on the moon, and I wanted to be part of a space program all through my childhood.
I remember when I looked to the sky and see the stars, this curiosity made me dream to be an astronaut.
I was 7 years old telling everyone, I'm going to work at NASA, I'm going to go to space. I constantly heard that this was not for me, but I never cared, so I did it. I worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, and I worked on 5 NASA missions.
It's just a dream come true. I wanted to do this my entire life, and I told my wife on our second date, I'm going to space someday, and you have to be okay with that.
I've been told I'll be the first person to go to the bottom of the ocean, to climb Mount Everest, and go into space.
Being the first Mexican-born woman and the youngest American woman in space, I think it's so important to start making the demographics of space look like the demographics of our world.
I'm Brazilian, and I will be the second Brazilian to go to space.
I've always wanted to do this, and the sheer experience of looking out of the window is something I'm looking forward to.
It's eye-opening, it's beautiful, it's indescribable. I mean, I knew after I saw it that I wanted to go again. I mean, I knew immediately.
I am just so excited to be able to witness this in person, and I am fully expecting waterworks for sure.
This is the only thing I've ever really wanted to do, and I just can't believe it's happening.
I'm living a dream, and I represent this dream for more than 200 million of Brazilians.
This is going to be just an epic, exciting, fun adventure.
We've heard time and time again from our astronauts.
So yeah, that's a really good introduction of the people who are going to be flying on this flight. And as you can see, a couple of them are just, you know, regular people who have had the awesome opportunity to be able to be selected to join this launch. So really something to get excited about.
The last human flight. Stay tuned.
And here I think we can, you can almost see them getting ready there in the capsule. I know that this would be, obviously this is a really exciting time, just over 15 minutes away from the launch. If you have any questions about the new Shepard vehicle or about the new Shepard program or anything about Blue Origin or even just rocketry related, feel free to drop it in the chat. Yeah, I'm totally open to answering questions. One thing that's interesting is that Blue Origin, of course, has been around for like, what, 20 years? And they have lots of other plans. It's not just New Shepard. I would say New Shepard is like their pilot project. Their ultimate ambition is to make humans a spacefaring civilization. And Jeff Bezos founded the company with the idea of being able to take humanity like into the stars, like for real. Like he wants to build like space stations in space with like, you know, hundreds or thousands of people operating on them. Like he has really grand visions for what the future of human spaceflight can be. So New Shepard is kind of like the first step. And they also have another rocket called New Glenn, which is hopefully coming online sometime in the next couple of years. It keeps getting kind of pushed back, as rockets do. Over the past, I don't know, like probably 6 or 7 years or so, it's always been coming, you know, in 2 more years. But I think that in the next probably 2 or 3 years, probably by like 2025, I would expect that they might have some capabilities starting with New Glenn. And it's going to be a really incredible vehicle because it's going to be powered by, it's going to be like, you know, the modern vehicle powered by liquid oxygen and liquid methane. And it's also going to be able to lift really a lot of weight into low Earth orbit, which is really a capability that we need in order to build these types of structures in space, like the space stations and stuff. Yeah, New Glenn plus Starship equals lots of humans in space. So we need to keep encouraging these companies to work on these types of things, I would say.
And know you are in good hands with Blue Origin. I will watch and relive my experience through you all. Astronaut Jim Kitchen. Dear NS-21 crew family, there are so many takeaways from this incredible experience on which you've embarked. Breaking through boundaries, never giving up on dreams such as going to space, and that anything is possible. 8 billion people have walked our planet, yet only few more than 600 have witnessed what you'll soon be seeing outside your window, our beautiful borderless Earth from space. Relax, smile, breathe, and be completely present. And may that view forever be etched in your memory and make you ever more humbled, compassionate, and dedicated to doing good. And finally, from Blue Origin's own Gary Lai, you are about to experience something so intense and moving that for the rest of your life, You will mark the person you become as different at your core than the person that came before. Enjoy this time as you will relive it vividly and daydream every day for a long time to come.
That's a really nice letter. I think it expresses the sentiments of the people involved, for sure. They should begin fueling soon. One of the interesting things about the fuel they're using is it's of course liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen.
And enjoy the flight.
And this means they need to cryogenically cool those propellants. The hydrogen especially has to go down to minus 250 degrees Celsius, which is really, really cold. And getting it that cold, especially in the desert, is sometimes not easy. Sometimes I wonder about the first step that New Shepard takes, because of course they do this first step and they pick like one of the hardest combustion cycles to do, the tap-off cycle, using some of the hardest propellants to use, hydrogen and oxygen. So it seems like they kind of like jumped into it like all at once and were like, let's just tackle the hardest thing first, develop a crazy engine. But it's worked for them so far. So they also, the safety that goes into this vehicle is just insane. Like they did, I think it was like 17 or 18 test flights before they said, okay, we're good to launch. Which compared to other rocketry programs, like they never get that kind of testing before they just go into operation.
Shepard is escape enabled. Eddie, can you help share with the viewers what's the significance of this moment?
Okay, we've said here many times at Blue Origin, we started the webcast today, it's all about safety. Escape enabled is a pivotal moment in the flight preparation where the full envelope escape system is active, ensuring the astronauts are safe throughout all phases of flight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eddie. All right, we're going to continue to wait. So while we wait, let's send it back to the rocket.
So I just want to clarify a little bit what they were meaning there by escape enabled. Basically, Blue Origin has an escape system attached. Sorry, not Blue Origin. New Shepard has an escape system attached to it. And what that looks like is you'll kind of see a table looking structure in the middle of the capsule. So it's like the seats are all arranged around the windows, and then there's like this cylindrical table looking thing in the middle. And that's not just a table. There's actually a solid rocket that's actually in the core of the center of the capsule. And the reason why that solid rocket is there is so that if there's a problem with the New Shepard vehicle, they can activate the emergency escape system. And basically that's that solid rocket that gets lit, and it'll take the capsule really fast away from the vehicle. And they've actually tested this once during their testing campaign, where they proved that yes, the capsule can move away from the capsule and keep the people on the capsule safe. That's essentially the reason for it, because you want to obviously get away from an exploding rocket as quickly as possible, and this is how you can do that. It can also be activated on the ground. So if there's a problem just on the launch pad, maybe like during fueling, something blows up or there's a problem, they can also activate the emergency escape system and basically allow the capsule to fly away from the rocket or an explosion or whatever bad is happening.
Just entered a brief hold, so while we wait, we're going to just keep looking at the rocket in beautiful West Texas.
So, looks like there's a hold. I'm not sure what triggered this hold, but this just means they're going to stop the clock, and they'll be checking something probably in the system or something mechanical. I don't know. We don't know that at this point. And they will rerun the clock once they're happy with what's happening and that the vehicle is safe. Holds can happen for pretty much anything. It could be for weather. In this case, I don't think it's weather. It's a beautiful blue sky, so I can't imagine there's a problem with weather. It could, if there's a range violation, maybe someone, you know, drove their truck into the wrong spot. It could also be for, you know, any kind of telemetry issues they might be having, or anything related to safety of the vehicle. Or sometimes it, you know, engines will throw warnings and triggers, and yeah, they can trigger these types of holds. Also, in general, I feel like New Shepard tends to go through more holds than most vehicles. They tend to take things very safe, very slowly, very, yeah, they really stand behind the statement that, you know, failure is not an option. Nothing can fail ever. And I would say that New Shepard is probably the safest vehicle for space on the planet. I don't think there's a safer system. They've just tested the hell out of it. Okay, it looks like the hold was taken away, and we're back. Oh, there we go. Clock's restarted. Launch time,
And we have
10
cleared
minutes.
the hold. The countdown clock has resumed on its way to T0. We are just waiting here for the final go, no-go poll at the instruction of the flight director. Let's stay tuned.
Of course, because the vehicle is just going suborbital, so it doesn't actually go all the way into orbit. It's just going to 100 kilometers and coming back down. There's no like timing issue with the launch. Like they just have to tell the FAA like, hey, we're launching sometime this morning, and they get kind of like a window between like, you know, 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock or something, and they can launch anytime in that time. This is very different from an orbital launch, where they have usually like sometimes a single second where they have to launch. So if they don't launch on that second, then they have to wait till tomorrow. So usually when that happens, you really want to not do holds, which is why during like a SpaceX launch or, you know, an Ariane 5 launch or something, holds are usually not as common. And if you do hold, it means, we're shut down for the day. But of course, for this rocket, that doesn't mean that, because it's not going to orbit, so it doesn't have those restrictions on it. Also, curiously, I don't know if they've begun propellant loading yet, but usually you see like those gas clouds that come once propellant loading has started when you're dealing with liquid oxygen, but you don't see that here. So I'm curious if they just load a lot later because they have way less propellant to load. I've never paid attention to that aspect of the launch yet, so maybe we should look out for it.
This is the flight director on Channel 1 and UHF voice for the go poll for terminal count and launch. Capsule.
Go.
Booster.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Safety.
Go.
Capcom.
Go.
Engineering. Go. First step, this is your flight director, New Shepard, is go for launch. Booster, commence the terminal count.
Local flight.
So this is excellent news. The go no
Okay,
goal has
as
been
you
passed.
just heard, we are a go for launch for our 5th human flight. The 6 people on that rocket are about to fly to space in just a few minutes. All right, well, as we tick down to launch, Eddie, can you talk us through New Shepard's flight profile?
Okay, I'd love to. The flight profile really starts at T-minus 2.5 minutes when we enter auto sequence and the flight controllers become hands off. The booster does what it can to prepare the BE-3PM for ignition at T0, followed by throttle up. Liftoff occurs at T+7 seconds, and that BE-3 engine powers the booster up through the atmosphere just before reaching max Q, the maximum point of aerodynamic pressure. The BE-3 continues to work up to 2 minutes. It experiences MECO main engine cutoff, and then those two vehicles separate at 2.5 minutes. The booster achieves apogee, and it reuses its aerodynamic surfaces and fins to steer back to the landing pad. The drag brakes deploy, the engine restarts, and we get a nice soft landing over the landing pad. Meanwhile, in the capsule, our astronauts were enjoying microgravity since it's much slower to re-enter due to its shape. As it cuts through the atmosphere, the drogues deploy. The mains deploy shortly thereafter, coming down for a nice, soft, floating view of the West Texas desert. The landing systems engage just above the ground, with the terminal deceleration system sending a jet of gas, a poof of dust, and then touchdown.
All right, well, we're just under T-minus 6 minutes until liftoff. So let's take a quick breather while we wait for New Shepard's bit checks.
So yeah, that they just described was the flight profile the vehicle will take. It's a unique one because, of course, they're reusing that booster. And I'll say it again, this is, of course, the first booster that was ever landed returning from space. So it's, to be honest and fair, it only goes straight up to space. So it's a little bit different than how SpaceX goes to space. Like they have an orbital booster that's pushing the booster downrange really far. So they end up coming in with a lot more energy. But still, nonetheless, technically, the New Shepard booster is the first booster to be landed vertically coming from space. There were some other boosters which were landed vertically back in the late 1990s, I believe. This is when they were playing around with kind of new shuttle concepts where they would do like vertical takeoff and landing with a single vehicle and do like a single staged orbit and stuff. They were playing around with these ideas. And they actually built a vehicle which was able to land vertically, but they were just testing with it, and they just did kind of like the grasshopper hops that they were doing with SpaceX's Falcon 9 back in 2013. So, and also, of course, there was the Grasshopper, which was also doing vertical landings. But of course, those vehicles never went all the way to space. So, the first one to do it, coming from space, New Shepard. Unfortunately, the ASTRA Transcendence vehicle will not be reusing its booster. We're just at the start of our space engineering knowledge, so I would say that trying to design a booster that lands itself, or even just to have a bigger parachute, bring it back, was just too much for the engineering team to meet with our requirements. So it looks like we have another hold here. They really like these holds on New Shepard.
Another brief hold, so let's stand by while our astronauts wait to launch to space.
Hopefully it's not too long. Again, I just want to point out that because this vehicle doesn't have an explicit time which it must launch, these holds don't mean that basically the vehicle will be scrubbed. It just means that they're checking some things, making sure everything's okay, and then they can launch. And that's just because they're going suborbital, so they don't have to worry about meeting with something in orbit or getting a specific orbital track locked in. Although I would be curious what they actually do in those holds.
All right, well, we just exited the hold. The countdown clock is resuming, and I understand that all 6 astronauts are ready to go. Let's watch and listen as New Shepard goes through its final checks and revs up for 5th human flight.
This is also going to be the 21st
Here in less than
flight
20
of New Shepard.
seconds, we'll be entering auto sequence mode. Kaya, I know this is supposed to be business as usual, but I'm excited.
Never gets old, Eddie.
It's always exciting when a rocket's about to launch. It doesn't matter how many times it launches,
and
I
these
suppose.
astronauts sitting on top of the rocket, they're hearing it all, the hum of the hydraulic power unit, the batteries, the valves clicking on and off. They've practiced for this moment over the last few days. I think they're ready to go to space.
That rocket is alive, it's a living, breathing thing, and it is about to take 6 people to space, and 1 astronaut for the 2nd time.
It's also pretty crazy that they say they were training for the last couple of days. Like, usually when you're dealing with a NASA vehicle, you're training for many months.
Bridge retracting and those solar shades retracting away from the New Shepard capsule.
All right. Now it gets serious. You can see kind of the smoke starting to come off now, off the vehicle. That's just condensation. Of course, this is from the filling
about
process.
90 seconds here, we see the aft fins, those fins at the base of the vehicle that help direct the vehicle on ascent and descent, exercising their full range of motion.
And you can see just how much those fins can actually move. It's actually quite a lot of motion, range of motion they have. And actually, interestingly enough, they actually do this on the planes before they fly every time too. The pilot will just actuate all the flight surfaces.
At the bottom of your screen, the BE-3 propulsion module nozzle gimbaling. This is the primary form of control for the vehicle on ascent, and of course for landing, doing a full range of checks, ensuring free range of motion.
You can just see the engine just on the bottom there. It was gimbaling back and forth.
And those tanks are at pressure. There's variables for pressure and temperature on the cryogenic tanks in the green zone. That's what they're watching in mission control.
It's interesting how late they do this in the process.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to hand it over to mission control and launch this rocket. Godspeed, New Shepard. Buena suerte.
All right, here we go. She's flight ready.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1.
It's amazing how long they hold it on with the engine running. It's like 8 seconds. You can see the flight profile there on the left hand side of the screen there.
Started liftoff at 3,700 feet above MSL. That's about how far we are above sea level out here in Launch Site 1.
And that BE-3 engine rumble really coming through as the vehicle approaches the maximum dynamic pressure, the point where the aerodynamic stresses on the vehicle are at their maximum. That BE-3 engine will throttle back just a little bit. And there we have it, max Q.
Max Q is just the point where the vehicle is getting the most pressure from the atmosphere because of drag. It's usually the hardest point on the structure. Always good to pass it with no problems.
We're getting such a roar. Sitting here in West Texas right now, we can hear that BE-3 engine just roaring through the sky.
That's right, really doing work to power the New Shepard propulsion module and capsule to space.
And apologies, all the units here are in, of course, Imperial, this being an American company. Although SpaceX usually does put meters on their broadcasts, so I don't know.
Here in about 30 seconds, Kaya will see the BE-3 PM engine shut off for main engine cutoff MECO.
So that main engine's going to shut down, and then you'll see the capsule separate. And basically that means that the people inside are in zero gravity. So they're really experiencing that space feeling. Here we go.
And MECO, main engine cutoff. The vehicle is now coasting at over 2,000 miles per hour.
Kind of had a bad angle for the deployment, but it just happened. Of course, we're looking at the butt of the rocket, so
okay,
we
we
can't
should
really
have
tell.
separation of the capsule and the booster here momentarily. Laura Stiles will cue the astronauts to unbuckle their harnesses and start floating around the capsule. Victor Vescovo, Katia Chacerreta, Hamish Harding, Jason Robinson, Victor Correa España, and Evan Dick are now in 0G. Let's listen in.
Usually they show the capsule. So they're officially in space now. They've reached the Karman Line. We have 6 more astronauts to add to our chart. Very exciting. Also amazing that the tracking camera can still see them 100 kilometers away. So you'll see that the capsule is going to start coming down now. It just hit its peak velocity, or sorry, peak altitude, and now it basically just comes straight back down. Like it literally just goes straight up and down.
Just received confirmation the crew capsule's apogee of 351,183 feet.
And just to translate that into normal units, that's about 105 kilometers or 106 kilometers. So just over the Karman Line and then back down. And they're going to experience zero gravity all the way until about 150,000 feet or so. And that's when the aerodynamic forces are going to start becoming meaningful again.
One minute warning. 1 minute warning.
Well, Kaya, it really sounded like they were having a lot of fun in that 15 cubic meter cabin. Congratulations to all 6 crew. They just officially became astronauts. Outstanding.
Both the crew capsule and the booster are now descending, as you can see on your screen.
So in about 30 seconds, they're gonna hit atmosphere, and they're gonna need to buckle back into their seats.
And we'll follow the booster first for landing. That rocket is now reaching its atmospheric pierce point, returning from space and entering the atmospheres. The control surfaces of the fins are now starting to have air pressure to push against and to navigate to over the landing pad.
Oh, now you can see them both. Now that the booster has moved out of the way. So essentially it started to navigate, and then now you can see the booster coming back in for landing here.
And that booster is now reaching its maximum re-entry velocity, which is just under Mach 4. The booster's shape causes a lot less drag than the crew capsule, so it'll win the race back down to the ground.
And you can kind of see that ring on top.
The booster coming back from space to our landing pad. The wedge fins, steering fins, and ring fin really earning their keep at this point in the flight.
That circle, that kind of circle structure on top, that's the ring fin, and that's really what's causing the majority of the drag on the vehicle right now. And that's what's allowing it to slow down a lot without using the engine, which is really efficient so that they don't waste all the fuel coming back. And they use those 4 fins at the top to kind of guide the vehicle in order to target a specific landing point.
And you can just see that the air brakes are deploying here. This is such a critical step in slowing the vehicle down. Velocity starts to decrease very rapidly. You can follow along on the top right corner.
Here comes the engine
of your
relight.
screen, and we just
You
heard
heard
the sonic booms.
Sonic boom.
Loud and
there
clear.
it comes.
There's the BPM engine relit confirmed, coming down for a nice soft landing.
There we go. Never gets old.
And booster touchdown. Welcome back, New Shepard. Welcome back to our 6 astronauts.
For a lot of us at Blue, this moment in flight is one of the main highlights as it shows off the incredible engineering required to bring a rocket back safely home from space, ready to be reused.
This is the future.
No matter how many times you've seen this happen, a live booster landing onto the pad will always take your breath away. And I know that our 6 astronauts right now, they're sitting in their capsule enjoying the view as it slowly descends down.
In the meantime, we've got quite a shot there of the booster, and there's the capsule re-entering.
Obviously, the capsule coming down a lot slower, mainly because of the drag on the capsule, which is more per unit mass, which means it comes back slower. But I really want to reiterate how important it is that they land that booster.
The drogues deploying now. These drogues will slow the capsule down in preparation for the 3 main chutes.
And look how much that capsule shakes. I imagine it's quite a ride.
The 3 main chutes.
So you usually deploy those drogue chutes first because you want to slow down the capsule. You want to slow down the capsule enough so that you don't rip out the lines that attach your main chutes, which might happen because it's actually a lot of drag that's created all at once, and that can, you know, really cause havoc with your attachment points.
Okay.
So all the extreme stuff is over now. All we have left is the landing.
And as that capsule slowly descends, that retro thrust system soon will fire moments before touchdown to slow the capsule down even further, just to 1 or 2 miles per hour.
What a great shot there. Guadalupe Peak, the tallest mountain in Texas, behind, of course, our 3 parachutes and our 6 astronauts in their crew capsule.
I wonder if this is a drone or a helicopter. It's probably a drone.
Now, Kaya, keep in mind that here in West Texas, in the desert, we kick up a tremendous amount of dust, but it is a very, very soft landing.
Oh, wow.
And touchdown. Welcome back to Earth. New Shepard's astronauts. They just went to space and they are back.
That's right. Welcome back, the crew of natural selection.
I think the dust looks really, really cool when they land like that. It makes it looks way more futuristic. Gives it more of a grand entry. So yeah, that shows off the full reusability of this vehicle. So every single part, from the launch of the booster, also the capsule, all of it gets reused. The only thing that's being changed about the booster is literally the fuel. So I think this is really the launch vehicle of the future. And vehicles that do this for going to orbit, of course, will be the next step. Getting full reusability. That's exactly what Starship is trying to do out in Texas as well. And I'm sure that Blue Origin has plans in the work for developing full-scale reusability as well, because this is really the way to try and open up access to space for everyday people.
That's the fun part, being in those Rivians, flying down that dirt road. It's kicking up moon dust, very similar to the moon dust of that West Texas sand.
Yeah, you're dodging cacti and mesquite bushes and just trying to get to the astronauts as quickly but as safely as possible.
Look at these guys on this dirt road.
You can see that trail of dust being kicked up right now as they're headed out to the capsule.
Are they going the speed limit? I feel like they're going quite fast. Faster than I would feel comfortable going down a dirt road like that.
I think that's Victor with a thumbs up to us. He looks happy.
This capsule looks ready for reflight. You could put it right back on the launch stand today. Imagine, like, that's ultimately what would be the best, right?
If you just have. I don't know about you, Eddie, but I'm really excited to hear Evan Dick's second perspective of going up in space. I know this time he wanted to spend more time looking out the window and enjoying the view.
I wonder who's flying this drone. How far away are they? But yeah, this is once we get like real rapid reusability where we can reuse rockets like on an hourly basis or daily basis, I think that's really when we're going to see big changes in access to
space. So here shortly, Kevin Sprague, our crew member 7 for today's mission, will be leading the recovery team. We'll verify that all astronauts are giving him a thumbs up and happy, smiling faces, and then we'll get ready to open the hatch and welcome them back to Earth.
And to be completely honest, like this is a truly impressive place to perform this type of launch. Like you have all this scenery behind you with the mountains in the background and like the desert sprawled out, in front of you. Man, if they were to do this in like, Bremen, it might not be quite as exciting. Everything's just flat here. So
there you have it, Kaya. 2 reusable spacecraft rocket launch vehicles named New Shepard and RSS First Step.
I always love these shots where you have both the booster and the capsule. I know on the way down, the astronauts are always looking out their window to see if they can see that booster coming back down to land.
And those windows on the capsule are the biggest windows on a capsule that's ever been built.
Trucks, like we said, cutting through the West Texas desert, avoiding the cacti and the mesquite bushes.
Biggest windows on a capsule, so really truly an impressive view that you get. If you were to ask like which vehicle I would ride on if I were going to the Karman Line, of course there's 2 right now. There's Blue Origin's vehicle, which is the New Shepard, but there's also the Virgin Galactic Spaceship 3, I think it's a Spaceship 3 now, but they also have I think it's Spaceship Unity now or something, but they have that vehicle also goes to the Karman Line. But they don't have these giant windows on that vehicle, so you don't quite get the same visual experience, I feel like. This one I think is the better visual experience, and you get more room in the capsule as well. The advantage that Unity has, VSS Unity, is that she actually stays in the air a lot longer because she flies back instead of doing the capsule landing. But yeah, I think I would also feel safer on this vehicle as well. I trust capsules more for some reason. But it looks like the trucks are almost here.
Same shot, arriving, as we mentioned, anxiously awaiting this reunion.
You got it. So what's going to happen is Kevin Sprague, crew member 7, is going to get out. They're going to secure the capsule and make sure that it's safe before opening the hatch.
This is so like American, just like 2 pickup trucks show up to pick up a spacecraft.
What an action shot. That booster
you can't get more American than that.
Venting its propellants, and Kevin Sprague sprinting to the
they run up to the capsule
on his astronauts.
Ah.
Seeing some thumbs up there, Kaya. This is exciting.
I feel like if this was a European company, there'd be like a proper like.
Okay, I didn't count, but that looked like 6 thumbs up to me. What an incredible moment.
Absolutely. Our astronauts have returned home safely, and we're preparing to exit the crew capsule.
That really was flawless. From here, it appeared to be a safe launch and landing. Congratulations to the New Shepard operations mission team for doing it.
Yeah, usually, sometimes they show the camera inside the capsule, but they didn't choose to show that today for some reason. I'm not sure why. So apologies if you were looking for the space shot. I promise you that Astra's Transcendence vehicle will have a camera on it, and we will show space. I think also part of it is that they just don't show the internal capsule for privacy purposes, but they also put the audio on, so I don't know. But yeah, let's watch them get out of the capsule, and then I think we'll probably end the stream after that. Now, it's not going to be like when they come back from space in the, from like the International Space Station, so they're not like weak or anything. So they should have no problem. They only were in zero gravity for about 5 minutes, so it's funny that they have a boarding order. So they have an order that they go into the capsule and the order that they come out. So they're a lot more organized than, you know, flying on Ryanair or something, where it's just free for all. Probably easier to organize just 6 passengers as well. What I really would like to see is for them to put a camera onto the booster that's looking up at the capsule. I think that would be a cool view to watch the capsule like take off, and then you can see the stars and everything. Like, they got to think about PR here. They got to sell this thing, right? We want more people to buy launches to space. They got to make it look really incredible. Yeah, I think at least for now, though. I mean, the trip kind of sells itself.
And there they are, the astronauts standing up, unbuckling their harnesses, and touching terra firma.
They have all these processes in place where they, you know, set up the stairs.
You can see there in Kevin's left hand, he's got the key to the hatch as we're anxiously awaiting it opening.
We're waiting on the keys. What if you forgot the keys? It's funny that it even has keys. Like, are we worried that someone is gonna steal the spaceship? Take it off the launch pad? Take it for a joyride? We could have some official space piracy.
Saw a thumbs up there from Kevin.
He's opening the hatch, and the hatch is open. Welcome back, New Shepard.
Let's see if we can recognize some of our newly minted astronauts as they exit the hatch.
Here we go. Here they come out now.
I think that was Evan Dick.
That was Evan Dick giving the high five. Welcome back from your second time to space.
A veteran now of the New Shepard journey.
It's kind of like coming off a roller coaster. The greatest roller coaster ever.
There's Hamish with the high five to Kevin.
There's Victor España.
Katia Cesarreta.
Victor Vescovo.
And last but definitely not least, Jason Robinson.
And just like that, we have our 6 astronauts back from space, officially getting their astronaut title. Of course, to become an astronaut, all you have to do is just fly above the Karman Line, and then you officially get your astronaut wings. So it's great to have 6 new people added to the astronaut ranks. And we're excited to have many, many more in the coming years, especially this year, because I'd really like to see that record broken this year for the most number of astronauts in one year. It's time that those 1980s records fall. We're in the 21st century now, come on. So there it is. We've had a successful launch of the New Shepard vehicle, and I hope this ushers in much more rapid cadence for the New Shepard launching. I know they have plans to kind of get this cadence going a little bit faster. They've only been launching like once every couple months, but it'd be cool if they get up to like once a month. Like, think about that. That's 12 times 6. That's like 70 astronauts every single year right there. And will you be among those places? Remember, they're auctioning off a lot of these spots. There's lots of opportunity to get in on that action. So if you kind of search around the web and see where there might be a spot available and that you can just, apply for, maybe you'll be in a lottery. Who knows? You could be the next one on that launch. So if you want to be an astronaut, this is always a good thing to be checking out and following. And of course, I hope that you're also supporting some of the amateur rocketry activities as well. We are, of course, building the Transcendence vehicle here at ASTRA. And we're inspired by the rocket launch of New Shepard because they're also going to the Karman Line. We're not quite ready to take people, but we are going to take lots of cameras and document the event. And also maybe some memorabilia, which we will share with some of our supporters. So with that in mind, I hope that you have a great day, and I hope you remember to expand your horizons.